The arrest that changed everything. They say life can change in an instant. One moment, you're going about your day, following your routine, completely unaware of the storm brewing on the horizon. And then, everything shifts. For Olivia Grant, that moment came with the flash of red and blue lights in her rearview mirror. At 35 years old, Olivia was a woman who commanded respect. A black woman of intelligence, poise, and quiet power. She was the kind of person who didn't seek the spotlight but couldn't be ignored when she spoke. Whether in a boardroom or a courtroom, her presence alone could silence a room. But today, Olivia wasn't in a conference hall or intelligence meeting. Today, she was on a quiet road, driving back to Prince George's County, where she had spent her childhood. The day had started peacefully enough. She had taken a rare day off from her high-pressure job at the NSA to visit a local community center, where she was scheduled to teach an introductory cybersecurity class for underprivileged kids. It was something she believed in deeply, giving back, creating opportunities for those who might not otherwise have them. As she drove, the hum of the radio played softly in the background, filling her car with updates on local events. The day was supposed to be simple, but life had other plans. The traffic stop. Olivia first noticed the police cruiser behind her when she switched lanes. At first, she thought nothing of it. But when the cruiser mirrored every turn she made, a familiar unease settled in her stomach. Then, the flashing lights came on. Her grip on the steering wheel tightened. She took a steady breath, reminding herself of the steps every black motorist instinctively knows. Stay calm. Keep your hands visible. Comply with standard requests. She had done nothing wrong. There was no reason to be afraid. Yet, as she pulled onto the shoulder of the road and turned off the ignition, she felt a chill of apprehension settle over her. Something about this felt off. The officers. The first officer approached with deliberate steps, his hand hovering over his holstered firearm. His badge read Officer David Talbot. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and had the sharp, scrutinizing gaze of someone who had already decided the outcome. The second officer, standing behind the car, was Officer Morales, silent, yet his posture radiated something unsettling. License and registration, Talbot barked. Olivia didn't argue. She moved slowly, carefully, retrieving her documents before handing them over. She met his gaze directly, refusing to shrink under the weight of whatever he was searching for. "Were you headed in such a hurry?" he asked. Olivia frowned slightly. She had barely been 2 miles over the speed limit. "I'm not in a hurry, officer," she said, her voice measured. "I'm on my way to a community center." Talbot's eyebrows furrowed, as if the answer didn't sit right with him. He stepped away, whispering something to Officer Morales, who stood just outside Olivia's line of sight. That was the moment she knew something wasn't right. She had spent years studying human behavior. It was part of her job. She could read body language as easily as a book. And the way Talbot and Morales were interacting. They weren't following a routine traffic stop protocol. They were planning something. The moment everything changed. When Talbot returned, his expression was colder. "Step out of the vehicle." Olivia hesitated. "Why?" she asked, keeping her tone even. "Step out of the vehicle," he repeated, his hand now resting fully on his firearm. She knew better than to resist. Slowly, she complied, stepping onto the gravel shoulder. The spring sun was warm, but a bead of cold sweat traced her spine. "Ma'am, do you have anything illegal on you?" Talbot asked. Olivia's eyebrows shot up. "No." Talbot smirked, shaking his head like he'd heard that 1,000 times before. Then, in full view of passing traffic, he patted her down, his hand searching with unnecessary force, as if trying to assert dominance rather than find anything legitimate. Olivia clenched her jaw. She had spent years teaching security protocols to government operatives, and yet here she was, humiliated on the side of the road, a spectacle for any passerby. Then came Morales, searching her trunk. Olivia watched as he rifled through her belongings, her laptop, her small cybersecurity toolkit, even her thermos of coffee. And then, a pause. Morales held up a small plastic bag filled with white powder. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. The setup. "What's this?" Talbot asked, his voice dripping with false triumph. Olivia stared in disbelief. She had never seen that bag in her life. "That's not mine," she said immediately, her pulse thundering in her ears. Talbot's mocking smile widened. "Of course not." Morales chuckled quietly. Her mind raced. A planted bag of drugs. A fabricated arrest. She knew this trick. She had read about it, had seen reports on cases like this, and now it was happening to her. "You have the right to remain silent," Talbot recited, snapping the handcuffs onto her wrists. Olivia felt a wave of emotions surge through her. Anger, fear, disbelief, humiliation. This wasn't just a routine stop. This was a setup. And for the first time in her life, Olivia Grant had no control over what would happen next. The holding cell. The police station was small, with flickering fluorescent lights that made everything feel colder. Olivia was shoved into a chair, her fingerprints pressed onto ink pads before they took her mugshot. Possession with intent to distribute. The desk sergeant muttered, typing up her charges. Olivia inhaled sharply. Intent to distribute. This wasn't just an arrest. They were trying to bury her. The call that changed everything. After what felt like hours, she was finally allowed one phone call. She took the phone, dialed a number she rarely called, one that very few people even knew existed. The line rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Olivia." The voice was calm but sharp, carrying the weight of someone who knew something was wrong. "Robert," she whispered, choosing her words carefully. "I need help." A pause. Then, a shift in tone. "I'm on my way," Robert Hastings replied. She closed her eyes. Robert Hastings was one of the most powerful men of the NSA. He was also her direct subordinate. And when he arrived, the entire station would learn just how badly they had miscalculated. The courtroom shock that changed everything. The morning sun cast a dull glow over the courthouse as Olivia Grant was led into the courtroom, her wrists still bound in handcuffs. Her heart pounded, but her expression remained calm, unreadable. She had spent years mastering the art of control, of keeping her emotions hidden beneath a composed surface. Today, however, that control was being tested. She took a slow breath as the judge entered, her black robe billowing slightly as she took her seat. The courtroom was small but full. A few members of the press, some curious onlookers, and, of course, the two officers who had arrested her. Officer David Talbot and Officer Morales sat confidently near the prosecution table, their smug glances barely concealed. They believed this would be quick and easy, just another routine case of a black woman caught with drugs, another statistic in a broken system. They had no idea what was coming. The charges that made no sense. The state prosecutor cleared his throat and stood. "Your Honor, the defendant, Olivia Grant, was found in possession of a controlled substance with clear intent to distribute. She also resisted arrest." Olivia felt her jaw clench. Resisted arrest. The lie was so blatant, so insulting, that she almost laughed. Her assigned public defender, Carl Bradshaw, stood slowly, adjusting his glasses. He was competent but weary, the kind of lawyer who had spent too many years fighting losing battles in this county. "Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty. She maintains that the substance found in her car was planted, and we have reason to believe that this case is based on false evidence." The prosecutor scoffed. "That's quite an accusation." Talbot smirked in the background, arms folded. Judge Desmond glanced at Olivia, her sharp eyes assessing. "Miss Grant, do you have anything to say for yourself?" Olivia took a slow breath. "Your Honor, the truth will come to light soon enough," she said, her voice steady. There was a moment of silence. Then, the courtroom doors opened, and everything changed. The highest-ranking NSA official walks in. The air in the courtroom shifted as a tall figure stepped inside, his polished shoes echoing against the tiled floor. Robert Hastings, Deputy Director of the National Security Agency. A man who rarely appeared in public settings. A man who had the power to make careers or end them. Whispers rippled through the courtroom. Even the judge straightened in her seat. The prosecutor, who had looked so confident moments ago, stumbled over his words as he saw who had just walked in. Talbot and Morales exchanged confused glances. Robert Hastings walked forward, his dark navy suit crisp, his expression unreadable. Then, in a voice calm but commanding, he spoke. "Your Honor, I'm here as a personal witness in defense of Olivia Grant." The room fell into stunned silence. The moment of truth. Judge Desmond leaned forward, narrowing her eyes. "Mr. Hastings, you understand the gravity of this case." "I do, Your Honor," Robert replied. He turned slightly, meeting Olivia's gaze for the first time. A silent message passed between them. Then he looked toward Talbot and Morales. "My testimony will prove that Miss Grant is not only innocent, but that this arrest was an intentional, targeted act of corruption." The room erupted into whispers. Talbot's smirk disappeared instantly. Morales looked pale. The prosecutor hesitated. "Mr. Hastings, with all due respect." "Let me clarify," Robert interrupted smoothly. He turned to the judge. "I hold a high-ranking security clearance. I oversee intelligence operations at the highest levels, and what I'm about to reveal is not classified, but it is damning." The judge nodded, intrigued. "Proceed." Robert turned to the defense table, placing a folder down with quiet finality. "Olivia Grant is not just any defendant. She is a top-ranking NSA official. My superior." A collective gasp filled the room. Talbot and Morales stiffened. The prosecutor blinked in shock. Judge Desmond looked at Olivia with new eyes. The power dynamic in the room had just flipped entirely. The evidence that ended it all. Robert continued, his voice controlled but dangerous. "The arresting officers claimed that they found illegal substances in Miss Grant's vehicle. However," he turned and lifted a USB drive from his pocket, holding it up. "We have obtained footage from their patrol car dashcam that tells a different story." Talbot visibly tensed. Morales looked like he wanted to run. The judge gestured for the bailiff to retrieve the drive. Within moments, the footage began playing on a large courtroom screen. The entire room watched as the video played. Talbot and Morales searching Olivia's car, finding nothing. Then the unmistakable moment when Talbot pulled a small bag from his own pocket before placing it into Olivia's trunk. The footage spoke louder than any words ever could. A shocked silence settled over the room. Then, Judge Desmond's voice cut through the air like a knife. "Officer Talbot, Officer Morales, do you have an explanation for this?" Neither of them spoke. They couldn't, because they knew it was over. The turn of the tide. The next few moments moved quickly. The prosecutor immediately dropped all charges against Olivia. Judge Desmond ordered an internal investigation into the officers involved. Talbot and Morales were taken into custody on charges of misconduct and evidence tampering. But the biggest shift happened as Olivia finally stood up, her wrists now free from handcuffs. She turned to Robert Hastings, who simply gave her a nod. A silent way of saying, "I told you I'd fix this." She turned back toward Talbot and Morales, who were now being escorted out of the courtroom. And for the first time since this ordeal began, Olivia allowed herself a smile. A new beginning. Outside the courthouse, the media swarmed, cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. "Miss Grant, how does it feel to be free? Did you expect Robert Hastings to defend you in court? What happens next?" Olivia paused, taking a deep breath. Then, with her signature calm confidence, she spoke. "What happened to me happens to far too many people, people who don't have the privilege of a high-ranking official walking into their courtroom," she said. She looked directly at the cameras. "This isn't just my fight. It's a fight for everyone who has ever been wrongfully accused, mistreated, or silenced. and that fight isn't over yet. Then, without another word, she walked away. Because Olivia Grant wasn't just going back to her life. She was about to change the system that had tried to break her. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you did, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.